5 months pregnant with twins, I watched my CEO husband marry another on TV. I vanished. The baby kicked gently in my womb, as if it could feel me staring at the massive electronic screen. I was standing in the VIP waiting area on the 3rd floor of an elite maternity center on Park Avenue. I held the referral for my regular monthly pregnancy checkup. The air conditioning was so strong that a sudden chill ran through me, and I wrapped my arms around my noticeably round belly. My appointment was for 3 o'clock. Yesterday, Alexander Davenport's assistant had sworn that Alexander would absolutely make time to be here. Of course, in the past 5 months, that had never happened, not even once. Miss Hayes, there are 2 patients ahead of you. Please feel free to have a seat and relax, the receptionist said with a pleasant smile. I nodded. I had barely settled into a plush armchair next to the floor-to-ceiling windows when a murmur rippled through the waiting room. Look. It's the CEO of Davenport Industries. My God, that's Alexander Davenport. He's getting married. The bride is Bianca Sterling, the actress who just won that major acting award. The voices were like a wave that crashed over me. I lifted my head. The large screen that covered the opposite wall, which usually played educational videos about pregnancy or clinic ads, was now broadcasting a live entertainment news segment. The shaky camera zoomed in on a dazzling white chapel, standing on a private estate overlooking the ocean in the Hamptons. The sunlight in Long Island was so bright it seemed to illuminate the screen from within. A red carpet stretched from the driveway to the chapel doors. Ushers in identical uniforms stood on either side. A drone shot swept over the Atlantic Ocean where dozens of luxury yachts were anchored in the blue water. Reporters with long camera lenses could be seen crowding their decks. And then he appeared. Alexander Davenport, dressed in a custom-tailored black tuxedo. His posture was as straight and elegant as a drawn sword. He stood under the arch of the chapel, his profile to the camera. His jaw was tense. The wind from the sea ruffled his dark hair, but he didn't fix it. He simply raised his wrist to check his watch. That gesture was so familiar to me. It was impatience, barely contained. Wow, Alex is so handsome today, a young pregnant woman nearby whispered, glued to her phone. I overheard her friend reply, they spent billions of dollars on this wedding. Bianca's gown is a custom French design. The veil alone is 60 feet long. Forget the dress, look at the flowers. Those are imported Ecuadorian roses, flown in this morning on a private jet. My nails dug into my palms. The camera cut to the inside of the chapel. The organ music, slightly distorted by the cheap TV speakers, sounded hollow, but the wedding march was unmistakable. The pews were full. I recognized a few faces often seen on the covers of Forbes. Victoria Davenport, his mother, sat in the front row wearing a severe, dark plum suit. Not a single strand of hair was out of place. She was smiling. I had seen that smile countless times in their penthouse overlooking Central Park, regal, proper, but utterly devoid of warmth. Then came the bride. Bianca Sterling, on her father's arm, walked slowly down the aisle. The dress was indeed breathtaking, cascades of lace and diamond dust shimmering in the light. Her veil hid most of her face, but you could see the corners of her nude-painted lips smiling in a carefully calculated way. She reached Alexander. The priest began the vows. The scrolling ticker at the bottom of the screen pierced me like a knife. Live wedding, Davenport Industries CO, Alexander Davenport and list star Bianca Sterling. The wedding of the decade. Breaking, Bianca reportedly 2 months pregnant. A double joy. A sharp, violent cramp suddenly seized my abdomen. It was not a baby's kick. It was a contraction. Faint, but enough to make me double over, leaning heavily on the coffee table beside me. Miss Hayes, are you all right? A nurse rushed over. I shook my head, struggling to breathe. I'm fine, it's just a little warm in here. But my eyes remained glued to the screen. The priest's voice echoed through the speakers. Alexander, do you take Bianca to be your lawfully wedded wife? For better, for worse. In sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part? The entire waiting room fell silent. Everyone held their breath, waiting for his answer. The camera zoomed in on Alexander's face. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Then his deep, crisp voice rang through the microphone. I do. Bianca, do you? Yes, Father, I do. Bianca's voice was as sweet as honey, not even waiting for the priest to finish. A roar erupted from the screen. Confetti and rose petals rained down. Alexander lifted Bianca's veil, bent down, and kissed her. The camera moved in close. You could clearly see his eyes were closed, his lashes casting shadows on his cheeks. He kissed her for a long time, So long that someone in the waiting room started to clap. So long that the referral slip in my hand was now damp with sweat, its edges crumpled. A nurse gently touched my shoulder. "Miss Hayes, it's your turn now. Dr. Gomez is waiting for you in room 2. I turned to her, my vision blurring. "All right," I heard my own voice say, surprisingly steady. "I'm on my way." When I stood, my legs threatened to give way. I leaned on the back of the chair, took a deep breath, and slowly, step by step, walked towards the examination room. Behind me, the joyful cheers from the screen mixed with the anchor's excited voice. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's raise our glasses to the newlyweds." The clinic door closed behind me, and the world became doubly silent. Dr. Gomez was a specialist specifically hired by the Davenport family. She was in her 50s, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. She smiled and pointed to the examination table. "Althea, you're here." Alexander isn't with you today?" I silently handed her the referral. She took it, scanning the notes. "Last time, you had a low-lying placenta. Let's check again today to see if it has moved up." "Don't worry, that's common in early pregnancy." Cold ultrasound gel spread across my stomach. The probe pressed against my skin, gliding over it. The monitor lit up. The black and white image flickered a few times before stabilizing. 2 tiny figures, curled up, floated in the amniotic fluid. You could see their beating hearts, their tiny arms and legs. "The twins are developing well," Dr. Gomez's voice was professionally soothing. "Look. Here's the boy, and here's the girl. Oh, look at the little guy, he's kicking his sister." I stared at the screen. 2 tiny people, my children. And legally, Alexander Davenport's children. He was still my husband. Our marriage certificate was locked away in a safe deposit box, though I hadn't seen that piece of paper in almost a year. Victoria Davenport had filed for a divorce and separation of properties 6 months ago. I had signed the papers, but Alexander never added his signature. He said he was too busy, that there was no rush, that it was safer to settle everything after the babies were born. Safe. Such an ironic word. "The heartbeats are both strong," Dr. Gomez said, handing me some paper towels. "You can wipe yourself off now, and make sure to get plenty of rest. You look a bit pale. Did you skip lunch?" I slowly sat up, wiping the gel from my stomach. "Doctor," I began, my voice hoarse. "If a pregnant woman experiences extreme emotional stress, does it affect the babies?" She adjusted her glasses. "It depends on the stress. Generally, a short but intense emotional spike, the mother's body self-regulates. But if it's prolonged..." She paused, looking at me carefully. "Althea, has something happened?" I shook my head, getting off the table. "No. Just asking." When I walked out of the room, the large screen in the waiting area was back to playing an educational documentary about gestational diabetes. The pregnant women who had been watching the live broadcast had dispersed. Some were scrolling on their phones, others talking quietly. Fragments of conversation reached me. Alexander Davenport and Bianca Sterling. What a beautiful couple. I walked past them and took the elevator down. The hospital lobby was even busier, with lines snaking from the reception desks. I pushed through the crowd and out the glass doors. The 3 o'clock afternoon sun hit my face hard. My phone vibrated in my purse. I took it out. The screen lit up with a name, Alex Davenport. My thumb hovered over the answer button for 3 long seconds, then I swiped left, declining the call. The buzzing stopped. A few seconds later, it vibrated again. This time, a text. "Dinner at Jean-Georges. Tonight, 7. Mom says you absolutely have to be there. Peterson will pick you up at 5. I stared at those words and suddenly started to laugh. I laughed until my eyes stung. I looked up. On a massive LED billboard across the street in Times Square, they were replaying the wedding too. The camera was focused on the newlyweds, cutting the cake. Alexander had his hand over Bianca's. They held the knife together. Bianca smiled so wide her eyes became crescents, pressing her body against his. Alexander's face was expressionless, but he didn't pull away. He even whispered something in her ear that made her laugh even harder. My phone rang again. This time, it was Victoria Davenport. "Did you see the news? Alexander and Bianca had a commitment ceremony today. The official legal wedding will be after the baby is born. You will come to dinner tonight. We need to clarify some things. Don't make a scene, or it will only be worse for you." I locked my phone screen and put it back in my bag. Then I raised my hand, hailing a cab. The driver rolled down the window. "Where to, ma'am?" "Hudson Street, please." I gave him the address of my best friend, Katrina. The taxi merged into traffic. I leaned against the window, watching the city skyline blur. As we drove along the FDR Drive, another giant screen was replaying the wedding. A crowd of people had gathered below, looking up. One woman was even recording it on her phone. So sweet. The cab driver glanced at the screen and muttered indifferently. The rich and their spectacles. Rumor is, that actress's jewelry alone is worth as much as a penthouse on Park Avenue. I didn't answer. He kept talking to himself. These billionaire weddings are all for show. Who knows what really goes on behind closed doors? My phone buzzed again. I took it out. Unknown number. Hesitantly. I answered. A fast-talking male voice came on. Hello, I'm a journalist from Gossip Weekly. We received a tip that you are the legal wife of Alexander Davenport. His wedding today to Bianca Sterling could be considered bigamy. Do you have a comment? My grip on the phone tightened. Althea, are you there? You have the wrong number, I said calmly. But we have proof that you and Alexander Davenport registered your marriage 3 years ago, and that you are currently pregnant. I said. You have the wrong number. I hung up and immediately turned off the device. The taxi stopped at Katrina's luxury loft building in Soho. I paid, got out, and went upstairs. Katrina lived on the 18th floor. I took the elevator and rang the doorbell. It took almost a minute before the door opened. Katrina stood there in a silk robe, her hair messy, obviously having just woken up. When she saw me, she was startled. Althea, what are you doing here at this hour? Don't you have an ultrasound today? I walked in and slammed the door shut behind me. I leaned against the heavy wood, slowly sliding down to the floor. I looked up at her. Kat, help me. What happened? Katrina immediately knelt and took my hands. Why are your hands like ice? And you're so pale. Did the Davenports do something again? I shook my head, then nodded. Finally, I spoke. Alexander married Bianca Sterling today, I said, word by word, my voice frighteningly calm. It was broadcast nationwide. I was at the clinic. They showed it on the giant screen in the waiting room. Katrina's expression shifted from confusion to utter shock, then her face flushed with rage. He's insane. You're not even divorced. That's bigamy. I'll sue him until he's bankrupt. It's useless, I cut her off. The Davenports can make black white. Plus, I already signed the divorce papers. He's the only one who hasn't. In their eyes, I stopped being a Davenport a long time ago. But they can't do this, Althea. I grabbed her hand with surprising strength. Help me. I want to leave tonight. But you're 5 months pregnant. That's why I need you. I looked directly into her eyes. You still have connections at the airlines, right? Get me a ticket on a flight out of the country tonight. Anywhere. Just don't buy it in my name. Book it in your name. I'll pick up the ticket at the airport. Katrina's lips trembled. Althea, think about this. It's too dangerous. You're alone, with twins. It's more dangerous to stay here. I let go of her hand, getting up from the floor. Victoria ordered me to attend a family dinner tonight. Do you know what that means? She wants to parade me in front of all their relatives, to force me to acknowledge Bianca as the future Mrs. Davenport. She wants me to sign away my rights to my children. She wants me to accept a payoff like a beggar and disappear. I walked to the living room window and opened the blinds. The afternoon sunlight flooded the room, hurting my eyes. My decision is made, I said, my back to Katrina. I will give birth to these babies, but they will not carry the Davenport name. They will be mine, and mine alone. There was a long silence behind me. Then I heard Katrina sniffle. All right, she said, her voice ragged. I'll help you. She ran to her bedroom and immediately came back with her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. There's a direct flight to London tonight. 9:45 p.m. Only 2 seats left in business class. I'll book it under my cousin's name, Chloe. You just go to the VIP check-in counter and give them her information. Okay. When you get to London, you'll stay with my aunt. Aunt Helen. She's a wonderful woman. She runs a traditional wellness center there. She'll take good care of you. Once you're settled, we'll figure out the next steps. Katrina, I turned to her. Don't tell anyone about this, not even your aunt. She froze. Why? The Davenports have long arms. I walked to the sofa and sat down, gently stroking my belly. I don't want to get anyone involved. I'll find my own place in London. Don't worry, I have some savings, enough to get started. It was money I had secretly saved over the past 3 years. The allowance Victoria gave me every month. I didn't spend a single cent. I transferred it all to an offshore account. It's not billions, just about $2 million. But it's enough to start over. Katrina's eyes reddened again. Althea, why do you have to suffer like this? Because I don't want to be a goldfish in their fishbowl anymore, I answered softly. A car horn blared from below. I went to the window and looked down. Parked at the entrance was a black Mercedes SUV. The Davenport's driver, Peterson, got out and took out his phone to make a call. They're here, I said. Katrina rushed to the window. So fast. It's only 4:30. Victoria doesn't like to wait. I went to the door. I'm going down. Text me the flight info. I'll contact you when I'm at the airport. Althea. Katrina grabbed my arm, her tears finally falling. Please, be careful. Let me know as soon as you're safe. I hugged her tightly. I promise. I opened the door and stepped out. As the elevator descended, I stared at my reflection in the mirrored walls. A pale, tired face, faint shadows under my eyes. But my eyes were burning like iron forged in fire. The lobby doors opened. Peterson saw me and quickly put away his phone. Miss Hayes, Miss Victoria sent me to pick you up. All right. I got in the back. The SUV pulled out of the driveway and merged into the evening traffic. Peterson glanced at me in the rearview mirror several times, his mouth opening to speak but then hesitating. Finally, he couldn't hold it in. Miss Hayes, did you happen to watch the news today? Yes, I replied, looking out the window. A grand wedding. Peterson fell silent. The only sound in the car was the quiet hum of the air conditioner. I closed my eyes, counting the days in my mind. 5 months. 150 days. Alexander Davenport. Victoria Davenport. Bianca Sterling. Every debt you owe me, I will remember. When I return, I will be the one setting the rules of the game. I didn't go to the family dinner. The Mercedes was heading towards their penthouse overlooking the park, but 3 blocks away, I tapped the back of the driver's seat. Peterson, pull over here. He looked at me in the mirror, confused. Miss Hayes, we're not there yet. I don't feel well. I feel nauseous. I covered my mouth, my voice muffled. Just for a moment. The heavy car slowly pulled over to the side of the road. The second I opened the door, I bent over, pretending to retch. Peterson immediately unbuckled his seatbelt, got out, and ran around to help me. Miss Hayes, are you okay? Do you need some water? This was my chance. I suddenly straightened up. Before Peterson could react, I sprinted towards the open entrance of a nearby underground parking garage. The sound of my heels echoed in the empty concrete structure. As I ran, I took off my coat and pulled a dark gray hoodie from my large tote bag, pulling it over my head. Miss Hayes. Miss Hayes, wait. Peterson's shouts echoed behind me. I didn't look back. The garage had an exit on the other side that led to a narrow alley. Katrina's inconspicuous white hatchback was already idling there. The moment I got into the passenger seat, Katrina slammed on the gas. Seatbelt, her voice was tense. I looked in the back window and saw Peterson run to the end of the alley, stopping in confusion, and finally taking out his phone in frustration. He must be calling the Davenports now, Katrina said, expertly turning the wheel to merge into traffic. We have to get to JFK, fast. I fumbled in my bag, pulling out my turned-off phone. I rolled down the window and threw it straight into the back of a passing garbage truck. Katrina's eyes widened. I have to destroy everything that can be tracked, I said calmly, pulling a brand new prepaid phone from my bag. I turned it on. Kat, is the ticket confirmed? Confirmed. She handed me a folder. Passport, visa, booking confirmation. It's all here. I got you an expedited business visa under Chloe Gomez's profile. Aunt Helen will meet you in London. But all she knows is that you're a friend of mine going there for a quiet place to continue your pregnancy. Nothing else. I opened the passport. The photo looked vaguely like me. Though my eyes were different then. Then, there was light in them. Now, there was only ice. Thank you. I pressed the folder to my chest like a lifeline. We drove to the airport in silence. The setting sun painted the Manhattan skyline in shades of fiery orange and blood red. The traffic was heavy, the taillights of the cars merging into a river of red. I looked out the window, silently saying goodbye to the city where I had lived for 25 years. Here, I was born, went to college. Met Alexander. Here, he had placed a very expensive but utterly cold diamond ring on my finger. Now, I was leaving, carrying 2 tiny lives inside me who had not yet seen the world. Althea, Katrina suddenly broke the silence, her voice a little ragged. Are you absolutely sure about this? Giving birth and raising twins, alone, in a foreign country? It's going to be so hard. I turned to her and smiled. Is it any harder than staying with the Davenports? We reached JFK's Terminal 1. Katrina pulled up to the drop-off zone. She turned and hugged me tightly. Call me as soon as you land. Text me every day. If you run out of money, you tell me, I'll send it. You've done more than enough. I hugged her back. Kat, for the next few years, don't try to contact me. If the Davenports ask, pretend you know nothing. I pulled away and opened the door. You wait for me to contact you first. With a small carry-on suitcase, I entered the terminal. Inside the suitcase were a few changes of clothes, essential documents, and a bottle of prenatal vitamins. Everything else belonging to Althea Hayes Davenport, wife of Alexander, was left behind in that opulent but icy penthouse, along with the 3-carat diamond ring. I had left it right in the center of my vanity table. What kind of expression would Alexander have when he saw it? I didn't know, and I didn't care. Check-in. Security. Lounge. At 9:45 p.m., the plane departed on time. As the wheels lifted from the tarmac into the night sky, I looked out the window at the receding city lights and slowly placed one hand on my stomach. My darlings, I whispered. Mommy is taking you to a new world. It was the rainy season in London. Humid and heavy. Aunt Helen, Katrina's aunt, turned out to be a kind woman in her 50s. She ran a small, respected traditional Eastern medicine clinic. She set me up in a small 2-bedroom apartment right above it. It was old, but clean. Katrina told me you came here to continue your pregnancy because of stress back home, Aunt Helen said, bringing me a bowl of herbal chicken soup. You just live here peacefully. If you need anything, just let me know. I don't have that many patients downstairs. It's quiet up here, perfect for resting. I accepted the bowl gratefully. Thank you, Aunt Helen. Don't mention it. She sat across from me, looking at my belly. 5 months. Twins. That must be heavy. And look how thin you are. You come downstairs every day. I'll check your pulse and help you strengthen your body. And so, I stayed in that small apartment in a foreign country. For the first 2 months, I hardly went out. Every day, I helped Aunt Helen in the clinic, sorting herbs, learning to distinguish dried roots from leaves. In the afternoon, she would check my vitals and perform acupuncture. At night, I read her collection of books on traditional postpartum recovery. My belly grew bigger every day. By the 7th month, I couldn't see my own feet. One night, it was past midnight, I was reading propped up against the headboard when a sharp, twisting pain shot through my abdomen. My water broke. My teeth chattering, I fumbled for my phone and called Aunt Helen. She was upstairs in less than 5 minutes. One look at me, and she immediately called for an ambulance. On the way to the hospital, the contractions grew stronger. I gripped Aunt Helen's hand so tightly, I thought my nails would break her skin. Breathe, Althea. Breathe, she kept saying, but the tension in her voice betrayed her concern. Twins, premature labor at 7 months. I knew the risks. In the delivery room, I was half delirious with pain. The blinding surgical lights beat down on my eyes. The nurses' voices sounded distant. Push. One more push. I don't know how much time passed, but the air was suddenly filled with a baby's cry, and then another. The boy came first. The girl followed 30 seconds later. A nurse brought 2 tiny, bundled babies to me. Congratulations, a boy and a girl. They're premature, but they have strong lungs. They're going to be just fine. I turned my head and looked at the 2 tiny, red, wrinkled faces. Tears flowed effortlessly. The boy, Nathaniel, I gasped. Nate. And the girl, Gabriella. Gia. Those were the names I had chosen a long time ago, lying in the huge bed in the Davenport penthouse, staring at the crystal chandelier, dreaming of a future. Aunt Helen, her eyes red, nodded. Nate and Gia. Beautiful names. I spent the first few weeks after childbirth recovering in the clinic. Aunt Helen took care of me like her own daughter, cooking special strengthening soups every day. Because they were born early, Nate and Gia spent a month in the NICU. When I finally brought them home, they were tiny but full of life. When the twins were 3 months old, I made my first big move. Aunt Helen, I want to rent the vacant storefront next to your clinic. I placed a bank card on the table in front of her. This is all my savings, almost $2 million. I want to open a luxury postpartum wellness center. Aunt Helen was stunned. Althea, you're still breastfeeding. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. I can't wait. I looked at the babies sleeping in their bassinet. I have to stand on my own 2 feet as soon as possible. Half of this money will go to rent and renovations. For the other half, I want to formally study Eastern postpartum recovery methods under you. She looked at me for a long time, finally sighing. You are a stubborn woman. If I weren't stubborn, I would have died inside the Davenport mansion a long time ago. We secured the space quickly. It was 500 square feet, formerly a cafe. I did the design myself, warm wood tones, soft lighting, a dedicated lactation wall, and a special herbal steam room. Aura postnatal wellness. The day the sign went up, the sun was bright. Gia sat in her stroller, babbling and waving her little fists. Nate was just watching quietly, taking everything in. His eyes were exactly like his, but the gaze was completely different. It was the gaze of my son. No coldness, no calculation. Just pure curiosity. For the first 3 months, we didn't have a single client. Aunt Helen referred some of her own postnatal patients to help me out. That's how I got my first regular customers. I used everything I had learned as an economics major in college. I created service packages, printed flyers, and even built a sleek website. My first real paying clients were local expat mothers. They tried the herbal steam treatments and postpartum massages, and word of mouth spread like wildfire. By the twins' first birthday, Aura had 3 full-time employees. During the day, I ran the center. In the evenings, I took care of the children. And late at night, I studied for local certifications in childcare and maternal health. I was exhausted, but every day was filled with purpose. Nate was the first to speak. One morning, sitting in his playpen, he looked straight at me and clearly enunciated, "Mama." I burst into tears right then and there. Gia started talking a month later, but she was the first to walk. When she wobbled forward and fell into my arms, her brother couldn't stop laughing. My phone was filled with their photos and videos, but I never dared to send a single one to Kat. I knew how far the Davenports' influence reached. Any digital footprint could be a trail. I could only pour out my thoughts and their milestones into a thick, leather-bound journal, saving it for the day I could proudly stand under the sun. In our 3rd year, Aura opened its 2nd location. I received my international certification as a postpartum recovery specialist. My programs, which combine traditional Eastern remedies and modern science, were featured in major Asian parenting magazines. In the 4th year, I expanded the business to include early childhood development, renting a 3-story building. The first floor was the wellness center, the second floor was early learning classrooms, and the third floor was my private apartment with the kids. Business was thriving, but I never stopped gathering information. Kat flew to London twice a year, bringing news about the Davenports. Alexander and Bianca never legally married, she whispered one evening while playing with Gia. After that big ceremony, Alexander suddenly backed out of signing the papers. Bianca threw a fit multiple times, but Victoria managed to cover it up. I was reading a book to Nate. My fingers paused. Why did he back out? No one knows. The rumor is, Alexander was looking for something. Like a man obsessed. He pulled all the security footage from the day you disappeared, checked every intersection, train station, airport. But your passport was never swiped anywhere. Because I used Chloe Gomez's passport. And Bianca? She continues to parade around with the title of Alexander's fiancée, but everyone in their circle knows she's not fully accepted by the family. Victoria doesn't seem happy with her either, thinking an actress isn't elite enough for their bloodline. Kat smirked. Serves her right. She should have thought about the consequences before breaking up a home. I closed the book. Nate, Gia. Go play with your blocks for a bit. The twins obediently held hands and went to the play corner. Davenport Industries has been aggressively entering the maternal and infant care market for the past few years. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. They acquired several domestic brands. Last year, they launched a luxury maternity center line that's a direct competitor to what Aura does. I clicked on an encrypted file. I hired people to look into their quality control reports. 3 batches of their baby skincare line had lead levels far exceeding FDA limits. They buried the data. Kat came over. How did you get that? Money makes the world go round, I said calmly. The Davenports have many enemies. Many people want leverage over them. I'm just one of them. Althea, what are you planning? I stared at the Davenport Industries logo shining on the screen, the family I once thought I would devote my entire life to. I'm going back, I said. Kat gasped. Are you crazy? Alexander is still looking for you. If you go back. That's why I have a new identity. I took a folder from my safe. Aura is already an established player in Asia. I plan to make a highly publicized entry into the US market as an international luxury brand. But we'll have our headquarters right here, in New York. I will keep the name Althea Hayes, but I won't be Althea, the discarded Davenport wife. They need to know where they came from. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Besides, there are debts that need to be paid. By the spring of the 5th year, preparations for Aura's US headquarters officially began. I registered the corporation, assembled an executive team, and leased 2 floors in a prime skyscraper in Hudson Yards. The night before my flight, I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window of my London apartment, staring at the skyline. On my phone was an anonymous email I had received earlier. Attached was a video file security footage from the VIP waiting area of the maternity center in Manhattan. The date was exactly 5 years ago. In the video, a pale version of myself, clutching my pregnant belly, stared at a large screen. And on that screen, the live broadcast of Alexander and Bianca's wedding. The text in the email contained only one line. "We have acquired your request. Wire the balance to the secondary account." I closed the video and opened another folder. It contained everything I had accumulated over the past 5 years. Internal memos proving Davenport Baby falsified their lab results, records of Victoria Davenport using illegal tactics to crush competitors, compromising photos of Bianca Sterling with a well-known film director, evidence of tax evasion by several Davenport board members, and a blank template for a DNA paternity test report. I picked up a framed photo from my desk, me and the kids on a beach in Cornwall. Sunset. Nate and Gia were leaning in, kissing me on the cheeks. "My darlings," I whispered. "Tomorrow, we're going home." The city lights twinkled like a silent celebration. But I knew the real battlefield awaited me, 3,000 miles away, in the city I had fled 5 years ago. "Alexander Davenport, I'm back. Are you ready?" The plane landed at JFK at 3 in the afternoon. Nate pressed his face against the airplane window. "Mommy, is this where you were born?" "Yes," I said, adjusting his seatbelt. "And it's where you and your sister were supposed to be born." Gia, in the adjacent seat, was busy solving a Rubik's Cube. Hearing us, she looked up and blinked her clear, bright eyes she had inherited entirely from me. "Is Daddy here?" The cabin fell silent for a second. My assistant, sitting in the row behind us, suddenly looked at me. I gently straightened Gia's collar. "Daddy is far away. We're going to see Aunt Cat first." "Okay." Gia nodded and returned to her cube. That answer was enough for her. In the 4 years of her life, Daddy was just a character in fairy tales. I hadn't intentionally erased his existence, but I had never mentioned him either. The plane taxied to the gate. I held the children's hands and disembarked. 5 years of exile vanished the moment my feet touched American soil. The smell of the air, the English announcements on the intercom, the familiar brands on the billboards, everything reminded me I was back. Kat was waiting for us outside the VIP arrival exit. She nearly ran over and hugged me tightly. "You crazy woman. 5 years. Do you have any idea what these 5 years have been like for me?" Her voice trembled with tears. I patted her back. "I'm sorry." "What good is sorry?" She let go, her eyes red, and knelt in front of the children. "These must be Nate and Gia. You're so big. Give Aunt Cat a hug." Nate shyly hid behind my leg. Gia fearlessly opened her arms. "Hi, Aunt Cat. Mommy shows us your picture all the time. Such a smart girl." Cat picked Gia up and patted Nate on the head. "Come on. Auntie will buy you the best food in the city." In the SUV heading into Manhattan, Cat finally calmed down and switched to business mode. "There's a high-level networking gala tomorrow night. I got you an invitation. The organizer is the Chamber of Commerce. All the high society. All the big names will be there. Alexander Davenport has RSVP'd." She took out her iPad and opened a guest list. "Here's his track record for the past 3 years. Davenport Industries went hard into mother and baby products, but growth stalled last year. This year, they're preparing to launch the Nurture brand of luxury maternity centers, putting them in direct competition with Aura." I stared at Alexander's picture on the screen. Same face, deep-set eyes, cold gaze. But there were faint lines around his eyes now, and his demeanor seemed heavier. He had aged. And Bianca became the face of Davenport Baby 6 months ago. Big PR push. The future Mrs. Davenport herself guarantees the quality of our products. But they hardly ever appear in public together. The rumor is Victoria forced him to sign an ironclad prenup. I nodded, my eyes moving to the next name on the list. Ellis Health. Carter Ellis is also on the list. He took over the family business 3 years ago, investing heavily in healthcare. Last week, he was asking about Aura through back channels. Kat lowered her voice. Althea, do you remember Carter Ellis? I remember. How could I not? In college, he pursued me for 2 years. After I turned him down, he went abroad for his MBA, returning as the golden boy heir. Small world. Does he know you're the founder of Aura? Probably not yet. The industry knows the founder is Althea Hayes from London, but I'm sure he thinks it's just a coincidence. But tomorrow, at the gala, you have to use your real identity. That's fine. I locked the iPad screen. Whoever is meant to cross paths, will cross paths. The SUV stopped at a luxury high-rise in a building overlooking Central Park. I bought this penthouse a few months ago. Top floor, 270-degree panoramic views, maximum security. Kat came up with us, looking at the huge living room and the custom-built playroom. She sighed. This is nice. I'm friends with the owner of the management company here. You don't have to worry about security. Thanks. Oh, stop it. She looked at her watch. I have to go. I have a client meeting. I'll pick you up at 5 tomorrow. We're going straight to my stylist. After seeing Kat off, I showed the children their new home. Gia ran from one room to another in awe. Nate stood quietly by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the endless stream of cars below. Mom, Nate suddenly said. Are we here to fight a war? My heart jumped. I knelt down to his eye level. Why would you ask that? When Aunt Kat was talking in the car, her face was serious. And when you read those papers, your brow furrows. Like this. Nate's little hand reached out and touched my forehead, right here. I held his hand. Nate, Mommy just has some important business to take care of. But you and your sister, you just need to be happy and grow up. Mommy will handle everything else. He looked at me for a long time, finally nodding. Okay. I'll protect my sister. In that moment, in his serious gaze, I saw his shadow. I hugged Nate tightly. And Mommy will protect both of you. The next day, at 5 o'clock, Kat arrived with a glam squad. 2 hours later, I stared at myself in the mirror. An emerald green velvet evening gown, simple cut, but it hugged my waist perfectly. My long hair was pulled back into a sleek, low bun. Simple pearl earrings. The makeup was subtle, but focused on my eyes. That was the part of me that had changed the most. 5 years ago, the submissive and shy Althea Hayes had died in front of that TV screen. The one standing here now was the founder and CEO of Aura, Althea Hayes. Perfect, Kat circled me. When Alexander sees you, his jaw will drop. Gia ran out of her room and hugged my leg. Mommy, you look like a princess. Nate followed, wearing a smart little suit. Kat's assistant would take them to a fancy kids' dinner and play space for the evening, and I would pick them up after the gala. Be good for the babysitter, okay? I bent down and kissed their foreheads. Mommy will be back soon. The reception was held in a ballroom at the top of a skyscraper in Midtown. As the glass elevator ascended, the sparkling city slowly unfolded beneath us. Kat linked her arm with mine. Don't be nervous, she whispered. Tonight, you just show up, let New York's high society know that Aura has arrived. The rest, we'll do step by step. I'm not nervous, I replied. The elevator doors opened. The room was packed. Crystal chandeliers refracted dazzling light. The soft sound of a grand piano mingled with the clinking of champagne flutes. Waiters moved effortlessly through the crowd. We had been inside for barely a minute when a man approached us. Katrina, my dear, it's been too long. A balding, middle-aged executive extended his hand. It has been a while, Mr. Ellis Sr. Let me introduce you. Kat smiled, stepping aside. This is Miss Althea Hayes, the founder of the luxury maternal wellness brand, Aura. Althea, this is the chairman of Ellis Health. Miss Hayes, so young to be so accomplished. He shook my hand, his gaze lingering on my face a moment too long. You know, you look very familiar. I just have one of those faces, I suppose, I smiled politely, withdrawing my hand. We exchanged a few pleasantries before other guests cut in. Over the years, Kat had turned her boutique PR agency into a powerhouse and built a huge network. She walked me around the room, and before long, I had a dozen high-level business cards in my clutch. Althea. A smooth male voice called from behind. I turned. Standing 2 steps away, holding a champagne flute and smiling gently, was Carter Ellis. He had matured since our college days. The eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses were still kind, but now they held the sharpness of a seasoned businessman. Carter, I extended my hand. I've heard good things about you. He shook my hand, holding it a little longer than necessary. It really is you. I heard the founder of Aura was named Althea Hayes from London, but I just thought it was a coincidence. Small world. I retrieved my hand. He was looking at me openly, not hiding his assessment. You've changed a lot. 5 years is a long time. You two know each other? Kat asked tactfully. We were at university together, Carter smiled. Althea was the queen of the economics department. The line of guys wanting to ask her out stretched from our building to the other end of campus. You exaggerate. I took a glass of sparkling cider from a passing waiter. I wasn't drinking alcohol tonight. I needed absolute clarity. As we were talking, a sudden wave of tension moved through the ballroom entrance. I didn't need to turn around to know who had arrived. That kind of aura, that kind of gravitational pull, could only belong to one person. Alexander Davenport. Kat's grip on my arm tightened. I patted her hand gently, maintaining my calm expression as I continued talking to Carter. I've read about the private maternity clinics your group has invested heavily in. Aura has some highly integrated tech solutions for postnatal recovery. We should discuss a possible partnership. Absolutely. Carter's eyes shifted from me to the entrance. Alexander Davenport just arrived. Shall we go say hello? No rush. I took a sip of my cider. The night is long. As I said that, I felt a gaze piercing my back, as sharp as a needle. Footsteps. The heavy sound of expensive leather shoes on the marble floor was getting closer. The conversations around us quieted. People naturally parted to make way. I turned. Alexander Davenport stood 3 feet away from me. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. 5 years had left a mark on him, not of age, but of a cold, hardened edge. His eyes were deeper, his jaw sharper. He looked like a sword out of its sheath that had tasted blood. He stared at me. His gaze swept over my face, down my body, and back to my eyes. In his expression was shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally, it all coalesced into an bottomless, dark intensity. Althea, he said, his voice lower, rougher than I remembered. Mr. Davenport. I gave a perfect, slight smile and raised my glass. Long time no see. The air froze, everyone held their breath. Who in this circle didn't know the scandal that had erupted 5 years ago, when the Davenport wife had suddenly vanished? Who didn't know that Alexander Davenport had turned the world upside down looking for her for 5 years? And now, here she was, radiant, confident, as if she had just returned from a long European vacation. Alexander took a step forward. I could smell the familiar scent of cedarwood, his signature cologne. He hadn't changed it in 5 years. Where have you been? He asked, his voice so low, it seemed to come from between his teeth. London, I replied lightly. Started a business. It's going well. How about you, Mr. Davenport? I hear Davenport Industries is thriving. Congratulations. He stared at me as if trying to find a single crack in my mask, a single piece of the old Althea. But he couldn't. In 5 years, I had completely rebuilt myself. You? His Adam's apple moved. When did you get back? This afternoon. I kept smiling. Just in time for the gala. Oh, Mr. Davenport, allow me to introduce you. This is Carter Ellis, CEO of Ellis Health. Carter and I go way back, university undergrads. Mr. Davenport, Carter smoothly extended his hand. An honor. Alexander glanced at him but didn't take his hand. His eyes returned to me. We need to talk. I don't think this is a good time. I looked around. The networking was in full swing. I'm here as an official representative of Aura. We need to observe professional etiquette. Perhaps later, I can have my assistant call your secretary. Althea. He stepped closer, so close we were almost touching. Don't play this game with me. The smile vanished from my face. Mr. Davenport, I looked him in the eye. We are at a public corporate event. Please maintain your professionalism. Besides, I don't believe we have any personal matters left to discuss. No personal matters? He let out a dark, humorless laugh. You are my legal wife. You disappeared for 5 years, suddenly show up, and you're telling me we have no personal matters? Gasps echoed from the bystanders. Kat turned pale and opened her mouth to intervene. But I stopped her with a look. I put my cider glass down on a nearby cocktail table. The glass hit the mirror with a sharp clink. Legal wife, I repeated, my voice low but perfectly audible to everyone nearby. Mr. Davenport, you seem to have forgotten that I signed the waiver for our divorce 5 years ago. Just because you refused to countersign doesn't change the fact that we have been separated for 5 years. The marriage is irretrievably broken. I have already instructed my legal team to file a formal petition for divorce based on your psychological incapacity. The papers will be delivered to your corporate legal department on Monday morning. Alexander's face instantly darkened like a thundercloud. You want a divorce? Isn't that what you and Victoria have always wanted? I smiled again. I'm just fulfilling your wishes. With that, I avoided his gaze, turning back to Carter. Carter, about that proposal we mentioned. I have a detailed pitch deck. I'll have my office send it to you tomorrow morning. Carter looked at me with deep respect. Excellent. I'll be waiting. I nodded at him, then linked my arm with Kat's. Kat, let's go greet the chamber president. I hear his wife just gave birth to their second child. He might be interested in our postnatal recovery suites. We turned and walked away. Even after I had taken several steps, I could still feel his gaze boring into my back. Kat's hands were trembling. Althea, are you okay? I'm fine, I said softly. This is just the beginning. For the rest of the evening, Alexander didn't take his eyes off me, but I never glanced his way once. I smiled, shook hands, exchanged cards, and talked business. At the organizer's request, I even gave a short, 5-minute impromptu speech on stage about Aura's philosophy. Thunderous applause erupted as I stepped off the stage. I saw Alexander standing in a dark corner of the room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He wasn't drinking it, just watching me. His eyes held a storm of emotions, anger, confusion, and something I had never seen in him before: fear. The gala ended around 10 o'clock. Kat went to get the car from the valet. I stood waiting at the hotel entrance. The evening breeze cut through the New York humidity. I tightened my shawl. Footsteps approached from behind. Althea. I didn't turn around. Alexander came and stood beside me, the smell of scotch mingling with his cedar cologne. The children? He asked. My heart constricted, but my face remained impassive. Why do you ask, Mr. Davenport? 5 years ago, when you left, you were 5 months pregnant. His voice was ragged. Did you give birth? I turned and finally looked at him. Yes, I answered. A flash of emotion crossed his eyes, but I immediately cut him off. But they have nothing to do with you. They are my children. Mine alone. Althea. He grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight my bones ached. They are my children. I have a right to know. A right? I laughed out loud, violently pulling my arm away. Alexander Davenport, what rights do you have? 5 years ago, when I was 5 months pregnant, on my way to my prenatal checkup, you were throwing a multi-million-dollar wedding with another woman and broadcasting it nationwide. Did you remember your rights then, when you made me the laughingstock of the entire city? Did you remember your rights when I needed you and you sent me to voicemail? Did you remember your rights when your mother repeatedly humiliated me and tried to force me to get an abortion? I stepped closer to him, my voice almost a whisper, but every word cut like a scalpel. And now, you want to talk to me about your rights? Alexander, you tore up those rights with your own hands 5 years ago. Under the dim streetlights, his face was ashen. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The glare of headlights cut through the darkness. Kat's SUV had arrived. I gave him one last look. Don't forget to sign the divorce papers. Dragging this out will only make it uglier for you. I opened the passenger door and got in. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. He was still standing on the sidewalk, frozen like a statue. Kat asked cautiously, what did he say? Did he ask about the children? I watched the neon lights of the city blur, he guessed. So what now? I leaned my head against the leather seat and closed my eyes. Everything is going according to plan. What's meant to happen will happen. Outside the window, the city that never sleeps hummed with life. But I knew that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. I stood with Nate and Gia at the gates of the Elite Horizon Academy in Chelsea. It was the most exclusive and expensive private preschool in the city. Bilingual immersion, ex-military security, and most importantly, a strict background check for admission. I had secured the 2 spots through my status as CEO of an international brand and my foreign residency. Mommy, it looks like a castle. Gia looked up, staring at the limestone building, her little face lit up. Nate quietly surveyed the perimeter, holding my hand tightly. The principal, an elegant woman in her 40s named Mrs. De Leon, personally greeted us and gave a tour. We keep our classes small, no more than 5 children. All our teachers are highly credentialed and native speakers. The curriculum covers STEM, arts, sports, and emotional intelligence, she explained as we walked. You can rest assured, Miss Hayes. Our families are highly vetted. The environment here is very supportive. Supportive? I glanced at the line of Maybachs and Range Rovers idling outside, but said nothing. The paperwork went smoothly. Nate and Gia were placed in the same class. Their lead teacher was a cheerful and energetic British woman named Miss Mary. The children adapted immediately. Within 10 minutes, Gia had made friends with a girl at the coloring table. Nate was sitting in the reading nook, quietly leafing through a picture book. Such wonderful children, Principal De Leon said. Especially your son. His focus is remarkable. Thank you. I'll pick them up at 4. If anything happens, call my cell immediately. I had been at my office for barely an hour when my phone rang. The caller ID was the preschool. I answered immediately. Miss Hayes, this is Miss Mary. The teacher's voice was trembling. Nate had a conflict with another boy in the class. The boy's mother is here now. Could you please come over? I'm on my way. When I arrived at Horizon Academy, before I could even open the principal's office door, I heard a high-pitched, piercing voice. What kind of street kid is this? Getting into fights at the age of 4. Where are his parents? I pushed the door open. Inside, Nate stood next to Miss Mary, his little face like stone. His uniform was slightly rumpled, but his back was perfectly straight. Across from him, a chubby boy was crying, clutching the hem of an elegantly dressed woman's skirt. The boy had a faint red mark on his cheek. And the woman, I recognized her instantly. Bianca Sterling. Even though she was wearing oversized Chanel sunglasses indoors, the arrogant posture was unmistakable. Hearing the door open, she turned. Behind the dark lenses, her eyes widened. You? I ignored her and went straight to Nate. I knelt down. Nate, what happened? Seeing me, the tension in Nate's small shoulders disappeared. Mom, he took Gia's toy and pushed her. I told him to apologize. He wouldn't. Then he called Gia ugly. So I pushed him. Pushed? Bianca shrieked. My son's cheek is red, and you call that a push? He punched him. Miss Mary, how can you allow children with such violent tendencies in this school? Miss Mary tried to de-escalate. Miss Sterling, it was just a normal children's squabble. A squabble? Bianca took off her sunglasses, her perfectly lined eyes flashing. I have never laid a hand on my son, and now some fatherless child has hurt him, and you call it a squabble? At the words fatherless child, the air in the room froze. I slowly stood up. Miss Sterling, my voice was dangerously calm. Apologize. Now. Me? Apologize? Bianca laughed as if I'd told a joke. Your son beat up my son, and I should apologize? First, your son pushed my daughter. Second, the words you used were deeply offensive. I stared at her, enunciating every syllable. I said, apologize to my son. Bianca's expression twisted. She looked me up and down, eyeing my tailored, unbranded designer suit. So you're the mother. No wonder I haven't seen you around here. New money? That's none of your concern. I turned to the teacher. Miss Mary, I would like to see the security footage. Miss Mary hesitated. We need the principal's authorization to pull the tapes. Then get the principal. Just then, the door opened again, and a tall man strode in. Alexander Davenport. He had obviously rushed over from the office. His suit jacket was slung over his arm, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. Seeing the mess in the room, his brow furrowed. What's going on here? Bianca, as if her savior had arrived, immediately rushed over and clung to his arm. Alex, you're finally here. Look at Jackson's face. That boy hurt him. I asked for an apology, and then she attacked me. Alexander's gaze fell on the crying boy, Jackson. Then it shifted to Nate. In that moment, Alexander froze. Time seemed to stop. The office became so quiet you could hear the hum of the air purifier. Alexander stared at Nate without blinking. The shape of the eyebrows. The bridge of the nose. The particular way his lips were pressed in defiance. The resemblance was so clear, so stark, that anyone could see it. Nate stared back at him. In the 4-year-old's eyes, there was a crystal clarity, no fear, no intimidation, just a calm, curious assessment. This boy, Alexander's voice was dry. Who is he? Bianca, oblivious to the undercurrent, continued to complain. They said they're new. I don't know how she raised him. I am his mother. I stepped forward, shielding Nate with my body. Mr. Davenport. Hello again. Only then did Alexander's eyes move to me. In his gaze was a chaotic storm shock, sudden realization, anger, and a deep, aching pain. His Adam's apple moved violently. I said emotionlessly. Born on December 17th. 5 months pregnant, plus a premature birth at 7 months. The math matched perfectly. The color drained from Alexander's face. He let go of Bianca's arm and took a step forward. He knelt, bringing himself to eye level with Nate. "What's your name?" Nate looked at me. I gave him a small nod. "Nathaniel," Nate replied. "But they call me Nate." "Nathaniel," Alexander repeated, his voice barely a breath. "Is it just you and your mommy? Do you have a sister?" Nate pointed to Gia, who had been standing quietly beside Miss Mary the whole time. "That's Gia." Alexander's gaze shifted to the little girl in the pink dress with pigtails. Gia shyly hid behind the teacher, but her eyes, a carbon copy of mine, made Alexander stumble. He had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Bianca finally realized something was wrong. "Alex, what's wrong with you? Do you know them?" Alexander ignored her. He stood up and looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. "You had them this whole time. What did you expect?" I replied. "That I would wait for Victoria to throw them in an orphanage? My mother, Mr. Davenport," I cut him off sharply. "Right now, we are resolving a disciplinary issue. Your son took a toy from my daughter and pushed her. My son defended his sister and pushed back. How do you propose we resolve this?" Alexander took a deep breath, obviously forcing himself to function. He turned to the crying boy. "Jackson, tell the truth. Did you start it?" Jackson, intimidated by his stern tone, hid behind Bianca. Bianca was furious. "Alex, he's only 4. Even if he started it, it's just kids playing. That boy hit him." "I asked you a question," Alexander stared at Jackson. "Did you push the girl first?" Jackson sobbed. "I just wanted to play with her doll." "Apologize," Alexander ordered. Bianca was incredulous. "Alex, apologize," Alexander repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "To the girl you pushed, and to the boy you insulted." Sniffling, Jackson turned to Nate and Gia. "It's okay," Gia said softly. Nate said nothing, just looked at me. "Nate," I said softly. He apologized. "Your turn." Nate finally looked at Jackson. "I shouldn't have pushed you. But don't you ever bully my sister again." Jackson nodded. "Okay." I turned to the teacher. "Since this is resolved, I will be taking my children home for the day. They're excused." "Of course, Miss Hayes." I took the twins by the hand and headed for the door. As I passed Alexander, he blocked my way. "Althea," his voice was strained. "We need to talk." "Mr. Davenport, I'm busy." I didn't look at him. "And we have nothing to talk about. They are my children," his voice cracked. "I have a right." "You have no rights whatsoever." I raised my head and stared him in the eye. "Legally, you only provided half of their DNA. In reality, you haven't been a father for a single second of their lives. Alex, if you have any conscience left, don't play the loving father here." With that, I walked past him and out the door. The hallway was quiet. From inside the office, I heard Bianca's hysterical voice. "Alex, what does this mean? Are they your children? Answer me." I didn't look back. When we got to the parking garage, I buckled the children into their car seats. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking violently. "Mom," Nate suddenly said from the back. "That man, is he my father?" My hands froze on the seatbelt strap. In the rearview mirror, I saw Nate's calm, serious face. Gia was also staring at me, her eyes wide. The thing I had dreaded most had happened. I turned to face them. "Yes. But Mommy and some bad things happened a long time ago. So we don't live together, and you too, you just need to know that Mommy and Aunt Kat love you very, very much." Nate nodded. "Okay," Gia asked softly, "does he love us?" My heart twisted as if pierced by a needle. "Mommy doesn't know." I answered honestly. "But Mommy will love you enough for 2 people. So we don't need his love." On the drive back to the apartment, Gia quickly fell asleep, exhausted from the drama. Nate was looking out the window. As we neared the apartment building, he suddenly spoke. "Mom, I don't like him." "Why not?" "Because he made you sad." Nate's voice was small, but firm. "I saw it when you looked at him. Your eyes were sad." My grip on the steering wheel tightened to the point of pain. 4 years old and so perceptive. "Nate," I said softly. "Mommy was sad. But that was a long time ago. Now I have you and Gia, and my work, and our future. Mommy isn't sad anymore." "That's good." He seemed to sigh. "If you're not sad, then Gia and I are happy." When we got upstairs and I had put the children down for their nap, I went out onto the terrace and called Kat. "Althea, what happened? You sound different." Alexander saw the children at the preschool today, I said. Silence on the other end. And he knows. I didn't deny it. I closed my eyes, letting the city noise wash over me. Bianca was there too. It was a whole scene. What are you going to do? Stick to the plan. I opened my eyes and looked at the distant spire of the Davenport Industries building, cutting through the Manhattan skyline. Is everything ready? Ready. I have the original, unedited security footage from the clinic 5 years ago. Your chain of evidence proving Davenport baby falsified their FDA reports is solid. As for Bianca, I found her former personal assistant. She's willing to testify that 5 years ago, Bianca plotted to seduce Alexander and bribed the Davenport driver to take pictures of you having coffee with a college friend, framed to look like you were having an affair. Perfect, I said. Wait for my signal. The moment I hung up, my phone rang again. Unknown number, I answered. Althea. It was Alexander's hoarse voice. We need to meet. Mr. Davenport, I'm busy. Just 10 minutes. Please. He begged. I'm downstairs from your building. I walked to the edge of the terrace and looked down. The familiar black Bentley was parked on the curb. Alexander was leaning against the door, phone to his ear, looking up at my floor. The city was getting dark, the streetlights casting a long, lonely shadow of him. But not a single fiber in my heart was moved to sympathy. Wait there. I hung up, changed into a trench coat, and took the elevator down. I crossed the marble lobby and stepped out the revolving glass doors. The cool night air hit my face. Seeing me, Alexander stood up straight. Are the children asleep? He asked. They're beautiful, his voice was soft. They look like us. I remained silent. He stared at me, a storm raging behind his eyes. These 5 years, it must have been so hard for you, raising them alone. I managed, I replied coldly. It was easier than living with the Davenports. The corner of his mouth twitched. Althea, he took a step forward. I need to explain what happened back then. There's no need. I took a step back, maintaining a strict distance. Alex, if you're here to rehash the past, we can end this conversation right now. Other than finalizing our divorce, there's nothing left for us to discuss. And the children, his voice rose. They are my flesh and blood. I have rights. What rights? I cut him off, my voice slicing through the New York air. 5 years ago, when you were humiliating me in front of the world, did you think about your right to be a father? When your mother was constantly pressuring me, telling me to get an abortion, did you say a single word to defend me? Alex, what gives you the right to talk about rights now? In the dim light, his face was as white as a sheet. I didn't know, his voice trembled. I swear, I didn't know you were pregnant. My mother didn't tell me. Mother. That wedding. I was forced. My mother threatened to jump off the roof of the Davenport building if I didn't marry Bianca to secure the merger. So, I laughed, though tears threatened the corners of my eyes. So I had to be the collateral damage. I had to carry your children and watch you marry another woman on national television. Don't blame everything on your mother. You're a grown man. You had a choice, and you just chose what was most profitable for you. He shook his head, desperate to speak, but choked on his words. I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. I filed for divorce. And as for custody, the children are only 4, Alex. Under New York law, even if you spent your entire fortune in court, you couldn't take them from me. A judge would look at your 5-year absence and your mother's attempt to force an abortion and laugh you out of family court. If you're smart, you'll just sign the papers, and we can end this peacefully. Peacefully? The word seemed to physically wound him. Althea. How can we end this peacefully? Then we won't end it peacefully, I replied, ice in my veins. But the result will be the same. Alexander Davenport, I am no longer the naive girl you can manipulate. 5 years have passed. If you want a war, you'll get one. I turned to go back inside. Wait, he cried out. Just let me see them. Please. I am their father. I paused but didn't turn around. When the divorce is finalized, we'll discuss whether they want to see you. As I walked into the lobby, I heard the muffled, heavy sound of a fist hitting the hood of a car. Once, twice. I didn't look back. As I ascended in the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the mirrored doors. This is just the beginning, Alex. Every ounce of pain you caused me, I will return to you. Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock, Principal de Leon called me. Miss Hayes, I am so sorry to bother you. A gentleman arrived at the school this morning claiming to be the children's father. He's demanding to take DNA swabs from Nate and Gia. We refused, of course, but he's being very aggressive. He brought a lawyer. What should we do? My grip on my phone tightened. Is it Alexander Davenport? Yes. She said if you don't consent, he's going to file for a court-ordered paternity test. I'm on my way. When I arrived at the preschool, Alexander was there. He sat on the leather sofa in the principal's office. Next to him stood a man in a sharp suit holding a briefcase, clearly corporate counsel. Seeing me, Mrs. de Leon sighed. Miss Hayes. Alexander looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw covered in dark stubble. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Althea, he stood. We need to talk about the children. There's nothing to talk about. I threw my handbag on the desk. Mrs. de Leon, I am so sorry for the trouble. I promise, this will not happen again. Althea, Alexander raised his voice. Are they my children or not? I need a direct answer. An answer? I turned on him. You already know the answer. If you weren't sure they were yours, you wouldn't be rushing here with a lawyer demanding swabs. You just want a piece of paper to give you legal leverage to interfere in their lives. It's my right, he almost shouted. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Mrs. de Leon and the lawyer held their breath. I looked at Alexander and suddenly found it hilarious. 5 years ago, he didn't care if I lived or died. He didn't even know I was 5 months pregnant. And now here he was, foaming at the mouth, fighting for his paternal rights. Fine. I nodded. You want a test? Fine. He froze, obviously not expecting me to agree so easily. But I have conditions, I continued. First, the swabs will only be taken in my presence, at a lab of my choosing. Second, when the results come back positive, you and your mother will stay away from them. Impossible, Alexander answered immediately. If they are my blood, I will never let them go. Then we'll see you in court. I picked up my bag. Mrs. de Leon, please ensure security does not allow anyone near my children. Althea. Alexander blocked the door, his voice dropping. What do you want from me? They are my blood. How can I pretend they don't exist? The same way you pretended I didn't exist 5 years ago. I stared him in the eye. He flinched as if I had slapped him. I walked past him and out the door. The hallway was flooded with blinding sunlight. I leaned against the wall, taking a few deep breaths to stop the bile and tears rising in my throat. Don't cry, Althea. You don't have the right to cry. My phone buzzed. It was Kat. Althea, guess who just walked into my office? She let out a cold, sharp laugh. Victoria Davenport. She's demanding a meeting with you. Tell her I'm busy. She won't leave. She says she'll sit here until you show up. Kat lowered her voice. She brought a checkbook. I can see it. 5 million. 5 million. 5 years ago, when she cornered me to sign the divorce papers, she offered a much smaller amount. Inflation, I suppose. I'm on my way, I said. Give me 20 minutes. On my way to Kat's PR agency in Midtown, Carter Ellis called. Althea, I heard about the scene at the preschool this morning, his tone was somber. Do you need help? News travels fast. Thanks, Carter. I can handle it for now. I kept my eyes on the road. It's a family matter. All right. But take this as a warning. Carter paused. The Davenports play dirty, and Victoria is lethal. She survived the sharks of the business world for 30 years. Her methods are vicious. You're alone with 2 kids. Be careful. I know, I said softly. Thanks. I stepped on the gas. Kat's agency was on the 20th floor of a sleek glass tower. The moment the receptionist saw me, she stood. Miss Hayes, Miss Vance is in the main conference room. Mrs. Davenport is with her. I nodded and walked straight in. I pushed open the glass door. I saw Kat sitting at the end of a long table, arms crossed, looking furious. Across from her sat Victoria Davenport. Victoria was wearing a dark purple designer suit with gold embroidery. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She was sipping coffee with an elegance befitting a Vogue spread. 5 years hadn't changed her. She was slightly older, but her arrogance was even sharper. Althea. She put down the cup and looked at me. Sit down. Her tone was that of a master ordering a servant. I pulled out the chair next to Kat and sat. Mrs. Davenport. I hear you've returned to New York and brought 2 children with you. Victoria took a check from her Hermes bag and slid it across the mahogany table. $5 million. Take the money, take the children, and leave this country permanently. I looked at the check. The zeros were neatly written. I laughed. Victoria, 5 years have passed, and your only trick is still throwing money at your problems. It is the most effective way. Her face was unreadable. 5 years ago, you made the smart choice by signing the separation agreement. Make the smart choice again. Alexander and Bianca's legal wedding has been delayed, but it will happen. Your presence here with those children is complicating things. Complicating things. I picked up the check and held it up to the light. Are you afraid I'll ruin your carefully arranged corporate merger? Or are you afraid everyone will find out the Davenport family's dirty little secret? Victoria's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, girl. I am watching it. I threw the check back on the table. But you, Victoria, 5 years ago, you lied to me. You said Alexander was on a business trip when you were arranging his wedding to Bianca. You bullied me into signing separation papers and even tried to bribe my OBGYN into prescribing me abortion pills. Do I need to list your crimes alphabetically? Kat gasped. Althea, is that true? You shut up. Victoria shouted at Kat, then turned back to me. Althea, there's no point in dredging up the past. You have 2 choices now. Option 1, you take the 5 million and disappear. Option 2. She paused, a threat, a naked, unapologetic threat. I stared at her, suddenly remembering a sunny afternoon 5 years ago. She had sat in the Davenport penthouse using this exact same cold tone. Althea, Alexander needs to marry a woman who can solidify this family's empire. Not a nobody from a middle-class family like you. Leave quietly and keep your dignity. Back then, I cried, I begged, and in the end, I signed. But not today. I stood up, took the check, and slowly, deliberately, ripped it into tiny pieces. $5 million cannot sever the blood ties between my children and me. And it certainly can't repay your son's debt to me. The torn pieces of paper fluttered down like snow on the polished table. Victoria's composure finally broke. Althea, don't test my patience. I leaned over, placed both hands on the table, and looked her in the eye. Listen carefully, Victoria. I am divorcing your son. He will not get the children. And as for you, everything you did to me 5 years ago, I remember. And the bill is coming due. I stood up straight and looked at Kat. Kat, please see our guest out. Kat nearly jumped up and opened the door. Mrs. Davenport, this way, please. Victoria slowly stood, looking at me with eyes dripping venom. You will regret this, Althea. My biggest regret was marrying into your family 5 years ago, I smiled. But I won't regret what happens next. Because I will watch you pay, you and your son, for what you did. She said nothing more. Her back perfectly straight. She marched out of the room. The door closed. Kat grabbed my hands. Althea, are you insane? You tore up her check in her face. I know. I walked to the window, watching Victoria's black Rolls-Royce pull away below. I know she has politicians in her pocket. I know she's ruthless. But Kat, I am not the same Althea she could crush under her heel 5 years ago. I turned around. The war has started. There's no turning back. Kat was silent for a long time, then sighed. Find me the fiercest divorce lawyer in New York, I said. And send me the contact info for Bianca's former assistant. It's time to let some rats out into the light. That evening, I was served with papers from the court. Alexander had filed an emergency motion to establish paternity, demanding a mandatory DNA test. Kat was so angry, she broke a coffee mug. The nerve of him, to sue you. Althea, we have to fight this. The second the results are out, he'll file for full custody. We'll agree, I said calmly, looking at the subpoena. And not only will we agree, we're going to make a spectacle of it. What do you mean? I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up a large encrypted drive. This is the leverage I've been collecting for 5 years. Proof of Victoria's board manipulation, illegal fund transfers to shell accounts. It might not be enough to send her to prison, but it's enough to trigger an SEC investigation and tank the Davenport stock. Kat came over. You're going to use this to blackmail them into dropping the case? No, I smiled. I'm going to use it to show them I didn't come back to negotiate. I came back to destroy. 3 days later, Alexander and I met at a court-appointed DNA testing facility in Midtown. He looked even worse, his eyes bloodshot as if he hadn't slept. I had the children with me. Gia shyly hid behind my legs while Nate silently stared at Alexander. The procedure was quick. A technician took a swab from the inside of the children's cheeks and a vial of blood from Alexander. The results will be ready in 5 to 7 business days, the tech said. As we walked out of the clinic, Alexander called out to me. Althea, his voice was hoarse. If they're mine, we can start over. I paused but didn't turn around. Alex, in the real world, you don't get a reset button. You lost your chance. I know I was wrong. He quickly moved to block my path. For the past 5 years, not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted it. I searched for you for 5 years. I waited for you. You waited for me? I let out a dry laugh. Did you wait for your mother to try to buy me off again with another 5 million? I won't let my mother interfere anymore. He grabbed my wrist. Althea, give me a chance. Let me make it up to you and the children. Make it up to us? I finally looked at him. How exactly would you do that? Can you bring back the 5 years I lost? Can you change the fact that my children grew up without a father? Can you erase the terror I felt when I almost died on the delivery table? He froze. Premature labor at 7 months. Massive hemorrhaging. 3 days in the ICU. I enunciated every word clearly. Where were you? At a charity gala with Bianca Sterling? Or choosing your next strategic acquisition with your mother? His face went white. His grip on my wrist loosened until his hand fell to his side. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. I picked up Gia and took Nate's hand. Because I was never important enough for you. Alex, stop playing the tragic hero. You just suddenly realized there are 2 people walking around with your DNA that you can't control. With that, I led the children to the parking garage. This time, he didn't follow. On the drive home, Gia asked softly, Mommy, Daddy looks sad. I glanced at my daughter's concerned face in the rearview mirror. Gia, some people only get sad when they realize they've lost something they owned. That's not real sadness, that's just a bruised ego. Nate spoke up. Mom, if the test says he's our dad, is he going to take us away? My knuckles went white on the steering wheel. No, I said firmly. Mommy will never let anyone take you away. 5 days later, the results were in. Alexander, our lawyers, and I gathered at the clinic to receive the sealed envelopes. His lawyer aggressively tore his open, flipped to the last page, and his expression fell. Alexander snatched the paper from him. One look, and he froze. The paper slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the linoleum floor. I bent down and picked it up. Probability of paternity. 99.99%. Biological father, confirmed. I folded the report and looked at Alexander. His eyes were red, his lips trembling. He wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. Now you know. I handed the paper to his lawyer. They are your children. And that's all you will ever know. I turned to leave. Althea. The pained cry stopped me. My children. Mine. So what? I looked back at him. Legally, you might win visitation rights, if I allow it. But honestly, do you think they want a father who abandoned their mother? He looked like a puppet with its strings cut. He stumbled backward, leaning heavily against the clinic wall to keep from collapsing. I was wrong, he whispered, broken. I was so wrong. Mistakes have a price. I gave him one last cold look. And this is yours. I stepped out into the blinding New York sunlight, took out my phone, and sent a text to Kat. The war has officially begun. The official U.S. launch of Aura was set for Friday, 2 o'clock, in the Grand Ballroom of the Peninsula, New York. A week before, the invitations went out, media, investors from the New York business elite, industry partners, and even some direct competitors. Everyone who needed to be there, was there. Backstage in the Then the brand sizzle reel, product demos, and then the contract signing. Carter Ellis's group is officially signing the partnership today. It's a done deal. Then, a press Q&A. She paused, lowering her voice. Alexander Davenport is out there, seated 3rd row, right side. I adjusted my earring, staring at myself in the mirror. Is he alone? Just his assistant and lawyer. Kat frowned. I hope he doesn't make a scene. I smiled. It would be worse if he didn't. The woman looking back at me in the mirror wore a fiercely elegant white Alexander McQueen pantsuit. Hair pulled back tight. Flawless makeup. Eyes like stone. The girl who used to hide in the corners of the Davenport mansion wearing simple dresses was dead and buried. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked onto the stage. The spotlights hit me. The ballroom was packed. Camera flashes went off like lightning. Distinguished guests, I am Althea Hayes, founder and CEO of the luxury maternal wellness brand, Aura. My opening speech was short and to the point. I explained Aura's philosophy, our proprietary tech integrations, and our aggressive expansion strategy for the US market. The crowd loved it, especially when I announced the exclusive partnership with Ellis Health. Applause echoed. The lights dimmed, and the promotional video played. High-end visuals filled the massive LED screen. Aura's flagship centers in London, our medical teams, state-of-the-art facilities, warm aesthetics, soothing music. It went perfectly. When the video ended, the lights came back up. I returned to the center of the stage and took the microphone. Thank you. But today, besides introducing our brand, I want to use this platform to make a personal statement. The ballroom fell silent. I looked directly at the third row, right side. Alexander Davenport sat there, his posture rigid, his heavy gaze fixed on me. 5 years ago, I fled this city, I began, my voice ringing out clearly in the large room. At the time, I was 5 months pregnant. I went to my regular ultrasound appointment at my clinic, alone. And on that exact day, the television in the waiting room was broadcasting a live, lavish wedding. The wedding of my husband, the CEO of Davenport Industries, Alexander Davenport, and the actress Bianca Sterling. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Camera lenses immediately swiveled from me and focused on Alexander. His face turned ashen, his fists clenched on his thighs. At the time, Mr. Davenport and I were still legally married, I continued, my tone as if I were narrating a story. During my pregnancy, his mother, Victoria Davenport, repeatedly tried to force me to sign divorce papers and actively tried to compel me to abort the pregnancy. For the 5 years I was gone, I raised our twins alone while building Aura from the ground up. I pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The massive screen behind me flickered. The security footage appeared. Grainy, but unmistakable. The timestamp was exactly 5 years ago. The location, the VIP waiting room of a well-known maternity center in Manhattan. On the screen, a younger, paler version of myself, pregnant, was clutching her belly while staring at a wall-mounted TV. On that TV, Alexander Davenport and Bianca Sterling were kissing at the altar. The clip was only 30 seconds long, but it was a bombshell. Chaos erupted in the ballroom. Reporters jumped from their seats, shouting questions, recording on their phones. Alexander suddenly shot to his feet. His lawyer grabbed him, trying to pull him down, but he pushed him away. Althea. His voice was ragged, rising above the din. Do you really have to do this? I looked at him and pressed the remote again. The screen changed. Scanned documents, lab reports, internal corporate emails, purchase orders. Red circles highlighted fatal data points. Lead levels in Davenport Baby's organic skincare line exceeding FDA limits, falsified safety inspection dates, batch numbers of toxic raw materials. For the past 5 years, Davenport Industries, under the heavy influence of Victoria Davenport, has aggressively entered the childcare sector. My voice thundered through the speakers, every word a hammer blow. But in the pursuit of profit, they have repeatedly falsified safety data. These are the actual, unedited lab reports for 3 batches of Davenport baby lotions. The lead toxicity is 30 times higher than the legal limit. Through fraudulent compliance documents, these products were approved for retail. That's slander. Alexander's lawyer yelled, jumping up. We'll sue you. Go ahead, I looked at him. I've already sent the original files to the FDA, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Justice. Oh, and one more thing. I pressed the remote a final time. A high-resolution scan of a check appeared on the screen. It was a check for $5 million, offered to me just 5 days ago by Victoria Davenport. In exchange, she demanded I take my children and disappear from this country forever. I refused and tore up the check, but bank records don't tear. The ballroom exploded. Alexander stood frozen, paralyzed with shock. He looked from the screen to me, the realization dawning on him. His mother had done this behind his back. He had no idea. I am not standing here today to be a victim or to beg for sympathy. I lowered the remote and looked out at the entire room. I am standing here to tell the world that a woman faced with marital betrayal and corporate corruption does not have to stay silent. That a mother protecting her children can turn her pain into a weapon. I looked directly at Alexander. And that the guilty, eventually, will have to pay. With that, I gave a deep bow. For 5 painful seconds, there was absolute silence. Then a thundering, deafening standing ovation echoed through the room. Kat, flanked by security, rushed onto the stage and escorted me towards a backstage exit. The reporters surged towards the stage like a tidal wave. Miss Hayes, will you be finalizing the divorce? Is the Davenport baby lead scandal verified? Will you be pressing charges against Victoria Davenport? I didn't answer a single question. Shielded by guards, we exited out the back into a service corridor. The roar of the ballroom was muffled, but still audible. Kat grabbed my shoulders, trembling with adrenaline. Althea, did you see Alexander's face? My God, that was legendary. I leaned against the concrete wall and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. Kat, where are the kids? They're safe, with my assistant at the penthouse with a security detail, she assured me. She looked at her watch. You can't go back there now. The paparazzi will be swarming the lobby. You'll stay at my place until this blows over. The moment we stepped out of the service doors into the alley, a black Bentley screeched to a halt, blocking our way. Alexander stood there. His suit jacket was gone, his tie torn off, collar open. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. Seeing me, he took large, aggressive steps towards us. Kat tried to stand in front of me, but I gently pushed her aside. Althea. Alexander stopped 3 feet away. His voice like broken glass. You can hate me. You can get revenge on me. But why would you destroy the company? It's what my father worked for his entire life. I didn't destroy the company, I looked at him without pity. Your mother did. And you? If you had just had the courage to speak up 5 years ago, if you had told me the truth before you walked down that aisle, if you had acted like a man, a husband, and a father. I listed his failings one by one. None of this would be happening now. He shook his head violently. Tears, real tears, something I had never seen from this man, welled up in his eyes and streamed down his face. This arrogant, untouchable billionaire was crying in an alley. I didn't know, he stammered, his voice broken. I swear. I didn't know what my mother did. I didn't know she was pressuring you. I didn't know the safety reports were faked. He reached out his hand. Althea, give me a chance to fix this. Please. It's too late, I said softly. The moment you said I do at that altar, it was too late. I walked past him towards Kat's SUV. Althea. He shouted at my back. The children. Just let me see the children. My hand paused on the door handle. I didn't turn around. When the dust settles, I replied into the cold air. If they want to see you. I got in, and Kat sped away. In the side mirror, I watched him shrink in the distance, standing alone in the alley. A broken man. Kat spoke quietly. Althea, do you have any regrets? None. I closed my eyes. Kat, do you know how I survived those 5 years? I think so. No, you don't. I opened my eyes, watching the New York streets blur. When I was bleeding out on the delivery table, the doctor asked me who to save, me, or the babies. Before I passed out, I said, the babies. When Nate was 3 months old, his fever hit 104. In the middle of the night, I ran through a torrential London downpour, holding him, trying to hail a taxi. The doctor in the ER said it might be meningitis. I spent the entire night kneeling outside the ICU doors, praying. My voice was steady, but tears were silently streaming down Kat's face. Then, when I opened Aura, the local competitors tried to crush me. They stole my clients. They started rumors that I had slept my way to funding. I crawled through all of that blood and filth to get to where I am today. I turned to her. I didn't survive all that just for someone to say, oops, let me fix it. I came back to prove to the world that Althea Hayes doesn't need anyone's charity, and she doesn't need to be sad. Kat wiped her eyes and nodded fiercely. You're damn right. My phone buzzed. It was Carter Ellis. Althea. I saw the live stream. His tone was all business, tinged with awe. That was a nuclear strike. The Davenports won't take this lying down. I know, I replied. Do you need legal or PR help? Not yet, I said. But I do have a favor to ask. The Davenport stock is going to plummet when the market opens on Monday. I looked out the window. I want you to use your brokers to quietly buy up all the retail shares being dumped, as much as you can. Silence on the other end. Althea, what are you planning? I'm taking what's mine, I said softly. I left 5 years of my youth and my tears inside Davenport Industries. It's time to collect the interest. When we finally reached Kat's safe apartment, the children were sitting on the plush living room rug, building a Lego castle. Seeing me walk in, Gia dropped her blocks and ran over, hugging my legs. Mommy, we saw you on TV. You were so pretty. Nate came over and looked up. Mom, you look tired. I knelt and hugged them both. I'm not tired. I kissed the tops of their heads. Mommy just finished a very big, important job today. What job? I showed the bullies who hurt Mommy a long time ago that they can't hurt people anymore. Nate thought about this seriously, then nodded. Then Gia and I will be your bodyguards. Tears welled in my eyes, but I smiled brightly. Okay. After putting the children to bed, I opened my laptop in the guest room. The internet was on fire. Alexander Davenport bigamy, Davenport baby toxic skin, Victoria Davenport family and bribe, Bianca Sterling exposed. 6 of the top 10 trending topics on X, formerly Twitter, were about my press conference. The Davenport Industries corporate accounts were flooded with thousands of angry comments. Bianca Sterling's Instagram was a war zone. Her latest sponsored post for Davenport Baby had over 10 million comments calling her a homewrecker and a child poisoner. I closed the browser and opened an encrypted email account. There was a new message from an anonymous sender. Attached was an audio file titled Evidence. I put in my AirPods and pressed play. First, background noise. The clinking of silverware, like a high-end restaurant. Then, Bianca Sterling's unmistakable voice. Victoria, don't you worry. It's all taken care of. I paid your driver, Peterson. He'll get pictures of Althea having coffee with her college friend. He knows how to angle the camera to make it look like they're kissing. Good. Victoria Davenport's cold, arrogant voice cut in. Make it perfect. Althea is not elite enough for this family. Alexander needs to marry you to secure the Ellis merger. I know, Victoria. Once Alex and I are married, I'll make sure to take very good care of you. The recording stopped. I downloaded the file and replied with one word. Received. Outside the window, New York was dark, but the skyline glowed relentlessly. Tomorrow, worlds would be broken, and I would enjoy watching it happen. Saturday, 8 a.m. My phone woke me. It was Kat, her voice trembling with excitement. Althea, look at the news. Bianca is the #1 trend. Still groggy, I opened my phone. Bianca Sterling audio leak. Victoria Davenport framed daughter-in-law. Davenport stock pre-market crash. I clicked the top link. A new burner account had posted a long thread. 5 years ago, I was Bianca Sterling's personal assistant. Today, I'm telling the truth. Below, it was the audio file I had received last night. In 1 hour, it had millions of views. The comments were furious. My God, a literal smoking gun. Bianca and the mother-in-law conspired to frame the wife for cheating. And the wife was pregnant at the time. Disgusting. Is Alexander Davenport blind? He married a snake. Victoria Davenport should be in jail. I scrolled down. More headlines. Major brands drop Bianca Sterling. DOJ opens investigation into Davenport Baby. Davenport Industries issues statement. I clicked the corporate statement. It was standard, soulless PR, denying the accusations, claiming the audio was a deepfake, cooperating with authorities, operations normal, threatening legal action. No one believed it. The top reply was, "Are you going to sue yourselves?" I put the phone down and washed my face. The children were awake, sitting at the kitchen island eating pancakes Kat had made. Nate pointed to the flat-screen TV on the wall. Mom, you're on the news again. I looked. CNN was covering the fallout. Live helicopter footage showed a large crowd protesting outside the Davenport Industries headquarters in Manhattan. Angry parents held signs, "Poison sellers and jail Victoria." Riot police were setting up barricades. I watched the chaos with a completely cold calm. Kat came over with a cup of black coffee. "Victoria's in the hospital," she said softly. "Heart attack. Rushed to Mount Sinai in the middle of the night. Alexander is with her." Kat smirked. "Karma." I said nothing. I walked to the window and looked at the sky. Thick, dark clouds hung over the city. A storm was coming. 10 a.m. Carter called. Althea, Davenport stock dropped 20% in pre-market trading. As you asked, I had my brokers buy up 3% of the dumped retail shares. He paused. But I don't understand, why 3%? You won't even get a board seat. Not getting one now doesn't mean I won't get one in the future, I said. Keep buying, Carter, as much as you can. If you run out of capital, let me know. Where are you getting this kind of liquidity? I haven't just been playing house for the last 5 years, I said softly. And I have an outstanding invoice that Victoria Davenport needs to pay. Silence on the line. Althea, know when to back off. The Davenports are bleeding, but they're a massive conglomerate. They won't sink overnight. If you corner a dying animal, it will bite back. I know, I said. But I've been waiting 5 years for this bite. I hung up, changed into a sharp blazer, and looked at Kat. Watch the kids. I have an errand to run. Where? Mount Sinai. In the VIP cardiology wing of Mount Sinai, as I stepped off the elevator, 6 Davenport security guards were posted in the hallway. Seeing me, they stiffened and moved to block my path. But my own private security, 2 large ex-military contractors hired by Kat, stepped in front of me. Move, I ordered. They hesitated, looking at each other, but eventually parted. I walked to the last suite in the hallway and pushed open the heavy oak door. Victoria Davenport was lying in a hospital bed, an IV drip in her arm. Her face was ashen, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. Alexander was sitting in a chair by the bed, his back to the door. Hearing it open, he stood and turned. "Althea, why are you here?" "To visit the sick." I walked in and placed a fruit basket on the bedside table. She offered me $5 million. Even though I didn't accept, it's the thought that counts. Victoria glared at me, her chest heaving. "You have the nerve to show up here?" "Why not?" I pulled up a chair and sat, crossing my legs. "Victoria, have you heard the audio recording trending online?" Her face went even paler. "It's a fake. Slander. I will destroy you in court." "Court?" I laughed out loud. "You should be more worried about how you're going to explain the falsified FDA reports to the DOJ. Oh, and the embezzlement. You thought you cleaned up the paper trail, but I have a copy of every offshore wire transfer." Victoria's eyes widened in terror. "Where? How did you? How did I get the ledgers?" I finished her sentence. "Because your trusted CFO, Mr. Davis, his son had a little legal trouble in Asia last year. I pulled some strings and helped him out. As a thank you, he gave me some very interesting reading material." Alexander stared at me in horror, then slowly turned to his mother. "Mom, is it true?" Victoria's lips trembled, but no words came out. "It seems Mr. Davenport didn't know." I stood up. "Let me explain it to you. Over the past 5 years, your mother has siphoned off nearly $40 million. $3 million went to buying Bianca's major roles in Hollywood. $2 million went to funding a failing tech startup for her nephew. The rest? Well, I suppose it pays for luxury suites like this one." "Mom," Alexander's voice was broken. "Is it true?" Victoria closed her eyes, and 2 tears rolled down. It was an admission. Alexander stumbled back against the windowsill, looking as if all the bones had been removed from his body. I watched him without a shred of pity. "Do you understand now, Alex?" I said softly. "Your so-called family legacy, your so-called obligations, it's all an elaborate lie. Your mother, just to maintain absolute control of the board and force you into a merger, was willing to poison children and steal from her own company. And you?" I paused. "You were just an obedient puppet." "No," he shook his head weakly. "That's not true. True or not, you have to live with it." I walked to the door, my hand pausing on the doorknob. I didn't turn back. "My lawyers have filed a motion to compel the divorce. The hearing is Monday morning. As for the children, when the dust settles, if they really want to see you, I will arrange supervised visits. On one condition, you and your mother will never enter my private life again." I walked out, letting the heavy door close, sealing Victoria's muffled sobs and Alexander's broken questions inside. It wasn't my problem anymore. Riding down in the elevator, my phone buzzed. "Kat. Althea, check the news. Bianca's holding an impromptu press conference." I pulled up the YouTube live stream. Bianca, makeup free, hair disheveled, and eyes puffy, was sobbing in front of a podium of microphones. I was forced. Victoria Davenport threatened me. She said if I didn't seduce Alex, she would use her studio connections to blacklist me in Hollywood. I loved Alex, I really did. Victoria orchestrated everything. I'm just a victim. The reporters in the room smelled blood and started shouting. "Miss Sterling, you say you were forced, but you knew Alexander Davenport was a married man with a pregnant wife. You don't sound like a victim on that audio tape. Are you just throwing Victoria under the bus to save your endorsements? Do you have no shame?" Bianca just sobbed, unable to form a coherent sentence. Her publicist quickly cut the feed. I locked my phone. Spiders in a jar, eating each other. When I stepped out of the hospital, it had started to rain. I stood under the awning, watching the heavy drops turn the Manhattan skyline into a gray blur. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. It was Carter Ellis. "Get in," he said. "I'll give you a ride." I didn't refuse. The inside of the car was warm. Carter handed me a paper cup of hot coffee. "Warm up." "Thanks." The SUV merged into the wet traffic, the windshield wipers a rhythmic pulse. The city outside was a watercolor painting of gray and neon. "What are your next steps?" Carter asked. His eyes on the road. "Wait for the judge's decision on the divorce," I said, sipping the bitter coffee. "Then, just live. Raise my children and my company. The shares, just keep them," I said. Davenport Industries took a huge hit, but give it 3 to 5 years, and they'll recover. Their infrastructure is too big to fail. If Alexander can survive this PR nightmare, he might rebuild it. Do you want him to rebuild it? I looked out the rain-streaked window, and said nothing. Did I? I didn't know. 5 years of hatred, planning, and revenge had driven me. The satisfaction was in the execution, but the empty space in my chest wasn't so easily filled. Maybe some wounds, not even time and revenge can heal. You just learn to carry the scar. The SUV stopped at my building. Althea, Carter called before I opened the door. If, and I'm just saying if, you ever wanted to explore a new relationship, would you consider the people who are already standing by your side? I turned to him. The tips of his ears were slightly red, but his gaze was steady and serious. Carter, I said softly. Right now, all I want is to raise Nate and Gia. I don't have space for anything else. He nodded, a soft, understanding smile on his face. All right. Then I'll just be first in line for when you do. I stepped out into the rain. He didn't drive off immediately. He waited until I was safely inside the lobby before the SUV slowly pulled away. In the elevator, I looked at my rain-dampened reflection in the mirror. My eyes were tired, but beneath the fatigue, there was an undeniable sense of relief. The 5-year war was finally ending. When I opened my door, the children ran out from the hallway. Mommy, you're wet. Gia scolded, putting her hands on her hips. Go change or you'll catch a cold. I laughed, kneeling to hug them both, kissing their cheeks. Yes, ma'am. Mommy will go change. And then we'll build a fort in the living room. Yay. In my room, I changed into dry loungewear and went to the window. The rain was still pouring down, making the city a hazy dream. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A new text from an unsaved number. I'll sign everything at the hearing on Monday. When the kids are ready to see me, tell them I'm sorry. And thank you for raising them so well. It was from Alexander. I stared at the message for a long time and didn't reply. Some apologies come too late. Some sins I had not yet learned to forgive. But perhaps, in time would give the answer. Outside, the rain was slowly letting up. On the horizon over the Hudson River, a thin, faint ray of golden sunlight broke through the clouds. Monday morning, New York Family Court. The courtroom was packed. Kat, Carter, and a few friendly journalists sat in the gallery. Victoria was a no-show. The news reported she had been transferred to a long-term care facility in Switzerland. Alexander sat at the respondent's table in a sharp black suit. His face was thin, but his back was perfectly straight. Next to him sat his lawyer, looking like he was drowning in a mountain of files. The court was called to order. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client, Althea Hayes, and the respondent, Alexander Davenport, were legally married 8 years ago. 5 years ago, the respondent orchestrated a widely publicized wedding ceremony with another woman and has lived separately from my client ever since. The marriage is irretrievably broken. My client signed a separation agreement 5 years ago, which the respondent refused to execute. We asked the court for a declaration of nullity of marriage, full legal and physical custody of the 2 minor children to Miss Hayes, full financial support based on the respondent's means, and the revocation of the respondent's visitation rights. Alexander's lawyer immediately stood. Your Honor, my client admits fault in the breakdown of the marriage. However, we strongly object to the revocation of visitation rights. The children are his biological offspring, and my client has a fundamental right to be a part of their lives. Your Honor, I raised my hand. May I speak? The judge looked at me over his glasses and nodded. I stood up and looked directly at Alexander. 5 years ago, on the day I was 5 months pregnant and went to the clinic for my ultrasound alone, where were you? The courtroom went silent. Alexander's lips parted. His voice coming out dry as dust. Preparing for my wedding. A wedding, to whom? Bianca Sterling. And at that time, were we still legally married? Yes. Then tell me, I kept my eyes on him. A husband who throws a multi-million-dollar wedding with another woman while his wife is carrying his children. Does he have the right to stand in a courtroom and ask for the privileges of a father? Alexander's face went white. He couldn't force out a single word. His lawyer opened his mouth to object, but the judge raised a hand. Respondent. Answer the question, the judge said sternly. Alexander stared at the polished wood of his table for a long, painful minute. Finally, he looked up, his voice broken. I have no right, Your Honor. I turned to the judge. For the past 5 years, I have raised our twins alone. Mr. Davenport has not contributed a single dollar or a single minute of his time. Furthermore, during my pregnancy, his mother attempted to bribe me to disappear and pressured me to abort the pregnancy. I do not believe a man who condones such behavior has any place in my children's lives. The judge frowned, reading through the thick dossier of evidence. Alexander suddenly stood up. Your Honor, I withdraw all my objections. His lawyer turned, stunned. Mr. Davenport, what are you doing? I consent to the divorce. Alexander looked at me, his eyes red and wet. I consent to giving Althea full legal and physical custody. I waive all rights to visitation. A collective gasp echoed through the gallery. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Mr. Davenport, are you certain? I am certain. Alexander's voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. I owe her a debt I can never repay. This is the last thing I have left to give her. The verdict was swift. Divorce granted. Full custody to me. Alexander was ordered to pay maximum child support until the children turned 18. As for visitation, since he had voluntarily surrendered it, the court respected his wish. As I walked out of the courthouse, the New York sun was dazzling. Kat ran down the marble steps and hugged me. Althea, we won. We really won. I smiled, patting her back. Yes. We won. Carter came over, a soft smile on his handsome face. Congratulations. Thanks, Carter. As we were talking, the heavy bronze doors of the courthouse opened, and Alexander emerged. He stood at the top of the stairs, looking at me. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Kat immediately stepped in front of me, glaring. What more do you want? Alexander shook his head. He pulled a thick manila envelope from the inner pocket of his suit and held it out to me. This is for you. I didn't take it. What is it? The finalized divorce decree, he said hoarsely. Along with my signature and a legal transfer of 5% of the voting stock of Davenport Industries, from my personal holdings, to you and the children. I froze. Don't refuse it. He gently pressed the envelope into my hand. You and the children deserve this. Althea, I'm sorry. And thank you, for raising them so well. He turned and started down the stairs, towards his waiting car. He paused but didn't look back. The children. I paused, taking a breath. If you really want to see them, you can. But only supervised. And only if they agree. I saw his broad shoulders under his suit tremble slightly. He stood there for a long time before finally nodding. Okay. He walked down the steps, got into his black Bentley, and disappeared into the New York traffic. Kat looked at the heavy envelope in my hand. Althea, are you really going to accept that? Yes. I slipped the envelope into my designer tote. It's what he owes his children. That evening, I cooked a big celebratory meal in the penthouse to mark the start of our new life. Nate and Gia were happy, chattering nonstop about their day at preschool. After dinner, I tucked them in and read them a story. Gia suddenly looked up. Mommy, is Daddy going to visit? I stroked her soft hair. If you want to see him, Mommy will arrange it. But remember, whether Daddy is here or not, Mommy will always love you. Nate snuggled under the covers and leaned against my arm. Mom, he said softly. I think I want to see him. My heart softened. Why? Because he looked so sad. Nate looked at me with his serious, impossibly old eyes. And he's my dad. I hugged him tightly. Okay. Mommy will arrange it. A week later, I took the twins to a high-end indoor playground in Manhattan. Alexander was already waiting there. He was wearing casual jeans and a sweater, holding two large plush bears. He looked as nervous as a teenager on a first date. Seeing us approach, he immediately stood. Nate, Gia. He knelt to their level. I'm your dad. Gia sized him up. Nate just nodded. We know. Alexander's eyes filled with tears. These are for you. He handed them the bears. Gia took hers and smiled sweetly. Thank you, Daddy. Nate took his but said nothing. The visit was short, only an hour. Alexander pushed them on the swings, followed them through the climbing tubes, and bought them organic ice cream. He was so restrained, so careful, afraid of doing or saying the wrong thing. When it was time to leave, Gia surprised us all by running up and hugging his leg. Daddy, can we play again next time? The tears Alexander had been holding back finally fell, streaming down his face. Yes, of course. Yes. Nate walked up to him, extended his little hand, and shook Alexander's large one. Goodbye. On the drive home, Gia asked, Mommy, is Daddy a good person? I thought about it for a long time. People aren't just good or bad, Gia. He made some very big mistakes. And he hurt mommy a long time ago. But he's trying to be better. You can get to know him slowly and decide for yourselves. Nate nodded firmly from his car seat. I understand. Time passed. Aura soared in the US market, becoming the gold standard for luxury postnatal care. The partnership with Carter Ellis's healthcare group was immensely profitable. Davenport Industries, battered by scandals and federal probes, struggled to stay afloat. Alexander resigned as CEO, handing leadership over to an outside crisis manager. Victoria Davenport remained in an exclusive clinic in Switzerland and never interfered in company matters again. Bianca Sterling became a pariah in Hollywood, dropped by her agency, and faded into obscurity. The dust, it seemed, had finally settled. 3 months later, on a cool autumn Saturday, Alexander called me. Althea. His voice was unusually light. I'm on the roof of the Davenport building. Can you come? I have something I need to give you in person. I frowned. Give me? What? You'll see when you get here, he said. Just you. No one else. I looked at Nate and Gia, sleeping soundly. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. Okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes. The rooftop of the Davenport Industries skyscraper. When I opened the heavy metal door, Alexander was standing at the edge, his back to me, looking out at the vast concrete jungle of Manhattan. The autumn wind whipped through his hair. You came, he didn't turn around. What did you want to give me? I walked closer, stopping 3 feet behind him. He turned. In his hands was a thick, leather-bound legal folio. It's another 8% of the Davenport Industries voting stock. He held it out. Together with the 5% I gave you at the courthouse, that's 13%. You are now the 3rd largest shareholder in the company. I didn't take it. What is this? It's the last thing I can give you. He looked at me, his gaze incredibly calm. None of the manic desperation of the past few months. Althea, I'm leaving. Leaving? He smiled a sad, tired smile that held a strange sense of freedom. I no longer have any holdings in the company. My mother is in Switzerland. There's nothing left for me in this city. Nothing tying me here, except you and the children. I remained silent. Before I go, I wanted to make sure you had what was rightfully yours. He stepped forward and gently pressed the heavy folio into my hands. These shares provide enough dividends that you and the twins will never have to worry about money for the rest of your lives. Even if Aura collapsed tomorrow, you would have an unbreakable safety net. I don't need this. You do, he cut me off softly. Althea, I know you're strong. I know you built an empire by yourself, and you don't need my money. But this is the last thing I can do for my children as their father. Take it. Consider it my farewell. Before I could even grasp the folder, he reached into his coat pocket. A small velvet box. He opened it. Inside was the 3-carat diamond ring I had left on the vanity table 5 years ago. He took out the ring and gently placed it on top of the folder. I kept this for 5 years, he said softly, his voice trembling. Every day, I carried it, hoping I could put it back on your finger. But now I know, it will never fit your finger again. I want you to give it to Gia when she grows up. Tell her, it's from her dad. I looked down at the heavy folder in my hands. When is your flight? Tomorrow morning, he looked out at the skyline again. To Europe. Do the children know? No, he shook his head. Don't tell them. Once I'm settled, I'll FaceTime them. A heavy silence fell over the rooftop, broken only by the whistling wind. Finally, Alexander spoke again. Althea, can I ask one last question? Ask. If my mother hadn't done what she did, if that wedding hadn't happened, would we have had a real chance? I looked at him. The man I had once loved with all my heart, then hated with all my might, and finally, let go of. Alex, there are no ifs in life, I said softly. It's time for both of us to move on. He froze, processing the words, and then slowly smiled. Yes. It's time to move on. He extended his hand. One last handshake. I wish you and the children all the happiness. I reached out and took his cold hand. Take care of yourself, Alex. I let go of his hand, turned, and started walking back to the rooftop door. Althea. He called out into the wind. I paused and looked back. He was standing near the edge of the roof, the wind whipping his coat against the massive backdrop of the city. He looked so fragile, as if a strong gust could blow him away. I'm sorry, he shouted. And thank you, for loving me then. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced them back. Goodbye, Alexander. I walked through the door and let it close behind me. As the elevator descended, I stared at my reflection in the mirrored walls. The tears finally fell. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for the love that had died 5 years ago, for the naive and foolish girl I had been, for all the suffering, the resilience, and the relentless fight of the past 5 years. But as I cried, I realized something. The cold, empty space that had lived inside my chest for so long was finally gone. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was simply closure. And that was enough. When I opened the door to my penthouse, the afternoon sun was streaming through the windows. The children were awake, playing on the rug. Gia jumped up and ran to me, hugging my legs. "Mommy, why are your eyes red?" I knelt and hugged them both. "Mommy is just very happy." "Why are you happy?" "Because I have you." I kissed their chubby cheeks, inhaling their scent. "With you too, Mommy is the happiest person in the whole world." Nate looked at me seriously and patted my shoulder. "We're the happiest too." Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the sun was setting over the New York skyline, painting the clouds in brilliant, warm shades of gold and orange. The past was finally behind me.